First war, then the earthquake robbed them of their home. So they sit in a field and wonder, where will they live now? Local Syrian organizations have bought a few tents for those made homeless in Genderis, a town controlled by a Syrian rebel group backed by the Turkish government. But the amount of aid sent in by the international community is pitiful. Yesterday, a few UN trucks crossed the border from Turkey under the watchful eye of the UN humanitarian chief, who said the UN has so far failed the people of northwest Syria.
These trucks are a lifeline. We've been resuming operations here for the last 4 or 5 days. We're ramping up the scale of it so that we can begin to meet the needs of those people.
Today he was in Aleppo, which is held by the Syrian government. He has to negotiate with the regime to allow aid sent to Damascus to cross front lines and to open more border posts from Turkey. Another UN representative was meeting the Syrian foreign minister in Damascus. The Syrian government has promised to let aid cross into rebel areas, but will it?
It is important, as I said, that we get more resources, that we get assistance in cross-line and cross-border.
Back in Genderis, God alone knows how people will survive. Many perished under the rubble because the rescue teams didn't have enough heavy equipment and were at times working with their bare hands. Many here feel the international community abandoned them long ago during the war and hold out little hope that help will arrive in the quantity that's needed.
What moved me was when we found a family of 8 people. The father was hugging his daughter, a baby. He hugged her, and they were both dead. I cannot forget this image. It's heart-wrenching. Most people have no shelter, are sitting under the olive trees. People who have a home are welcoming families in. I also have 4 families living with me now at home who are helping each other. As free Syrians, we are helping each other, and we are giving what we can.
Baby Abdul Hasib is amongst the survivors. He was born in Al-Atarib, which is held by a different rebel group. His mother's in hospital, his father dead, so his grandparents will have to care for him now.
I am too old now to have a baby. This baby is not just my grandson, he's like my own child, and I will raise him. It was a shock to us. This child will never know his father, and now we have to bring him up. I was happy and sad at the same time, because my granddaughter has now died. But this child is like a gift from God, and he has survived. He is 15 days old.
2 homeless families in Genderis take it in turns to sleep in this truck. Geography condemned these children to war. They happen to be born on the Syrian side of the border with Turkey. After the earthquake, the cruelty of political power and the weakness of the international system will decide whether they get the aid they need or are left to their fate.
Lindsay Hilson reporting. Well, earlier I spoke to Radwan Awad. He's the team leader of the Syrian humanitarian organization Mercy Corps, and I asked him if they had received any kind of aid.
It's 8 days after the earthquake hit northwest Syria and Turkey, and it's so difficult. In general, in northwest Syria haven't received any aid the 5th day of after the earthquake, and it's a limited aid that received by the borders, the crossing borders next to Turkey.
You've been living with the war in Syria for 12 years now. Has that in any way prepared you for what you're experiencing as a result of the earthquake?
Actually, after 12 years of war and having such catastrophe, it makes the situation much more harder for people. If you didn't lose your friend, you lost one of your family.
If the help does arrive, what difference will it make?
Actually, after 8 days of having nothing, literally nothing, the humanitarian aid or maybe the equipment wouldn't do anything. because we were waiting for the heavy garments and machinery in the first 2 or 3 days to help people, to help that person who's standing above the rubble and can hear his family or her family voice. They can't do anything. They are with bare hands, really bare hands, trying to get their families and their beloved ones out. It's too late, actually.
Radwan, who's blocking that material? Is it the Assad regime? Is it the Russians in the United Nations Security Council? Who is preventing that stuff, that equipment from getting to you?
I don't want to focus on, let's say, the parties that are conflicting. Everything should be above of politics.
But politics does get in the way, doesn't it? Politics is preventing you from getting the help that you need.
Exactly, and here where we should put politics above, because we are talking about the very tough humanitarian situation for people in northwest Syria.
So when you see these pictures of these big diggers digging out survivors on the Turkish side of the border, and there are still miracles happening every day, when you see those pictures of the help that they're getting, what does that make you feel inside?
Since 12 years, we are ignored by the world community. And this is the reality. In general, none is care about us. And in this place, we should put everything, actually, even the politics, we should put it aside and look after the humanitarian need in area, because they are a human being.
Radwan Awad, thank you very much for talking to us, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Syrian earthquake victims abandoned and let down by the international community. Well, earlier this afternoon, I put that sentiment to Kelly Clements, Deputy High Commissioner of the UN Refugee Agency, who is currently in Aleppo.
Well, obviously, the humanitarian aid situation here is quite serious, and it has been for some time. People in need are even more in need now, and we're trying to get aid in any way that we can through every direction that is possible. And this is something that's not going to be an immediate need only. It's going to be for the long term. We saw some of this devastation ourselves today.
There are already millions of people living in northwestern Syria who'd been displaced by the war, by 12 years of war. How many more people, as far as you know, have been displaced by the earthquake?
Well, what we have indicated are primary, I mean, obviously these are early projections now, but those that have some damage to their property or who have had to leave their shelters and so on, in Northwest Syria, about 5.3 million people. So this is a huge number.
5.3 million people.
In people, that's correct. And we met with some of them today in Aleppo. If you look at the situation here, obviously you go from building to building, and quite literally some of the buildings look like there has been a knife taken down the middle, with half of the building slipping into the street. And that has, you see all the remnants, you see the clothing, you see the dressers, you see all of the personal effects of people whose lives have been turned upside down. And these are people who have, many of them, been displaced not once, twice, 3, 4 times. And some have even recently come back to Aleppo to try to rebuild their lives. And then, of course, to have a catastrophic event like this is just nothing short than tragic.
You represent the international community in the form of the UNHCR. What do you say to those people that we've been speaking to in northwestern Syria who look at the fact that there are diggers on the Turkish side of the border who've been trying to look for survivors for the last few days, but not a single digger in many of those communities in Syria where people have literally been left to die, in the rubble that their homes have been reduced to?
This is a horrible situation, and we are trying to get as much aid in as quickly as we can. wherever and whenever it is needed and however it is needed, cross-line, cross-border, into as many communities as we can. We had aid that was pre-positioned. We have obviously a large operation here in this country, and to have a crisis on top of a crisis. These are people. This is not time for politics. This is time to actually deliver assistance. Right. We've got assistance to deliver.
Of course it is, but you're not getting it to those people. So maybe it is time for politics. And I just wonder what you make of the statement that we've heard from people in that part of the country stricken by the earthquake who say, we've been at war with President Assad in Damascus for the last 12 years. He is perfectly happy to see us die in the rubble of our homes and use this earthquake as an opportunity to finish his work.
Well, as a humanitarian agency, I can tell you we want to save as many lives as we can. So this is the plea that we have to the international community, to all of the parties that are involved here, and to allow that aid in.
I know that you have to stay neutral and it's politically very delicate, but without something shifting on the political front at the United Nations Security Council, where the Russians have been blocking some of the access routes, apparently, with their vetoes into northwestern Syria, unless something shifts politically, these people will not get the aid that you're calling for right now.
Well, there's much more aid that is required. Some of those deliveries have already happened. Much more is needed.
So in practical terms, are you expecting more roads to be opened, more cross-border access to be provided in the coming weeks? Have you been promised anything at all by anyone?
Well, there certainly are signs that in terms of the need in parts of this country, the needs are great. So it is our sincere hope and our urgent plea to open as many different passages to get aid in as we can.
So nothing's really shifted then, as far as you know? You've not been promised anything concrete?
We're moving aid in, we have it ready, and obviously there have been some deliveries. We need many more.
What I'm hearing you saying is that a lot of stuff is basically ready in the area, either in Syria or elsewhere, to be put into those most stricken parts of northwestern Syria, but it's not getting there because it's not allowed to get there.
Some of that aid has gone into the area, and we have partners in Northwest that are delivering as we speak. What we know is that the needs are very great, and much more humanitarian aid will be required.
The white helmets, who you know very well, who've been doing a lot of the digging in the rubble, digging the survivors out of these death traps that their houses have become, they have criticized the UN directly. They have said the UN has failed in its mission here.
In fact, we have, obviously on the humanitarian aid side, we are trying to deliver as much as we can through as many channels as we can, and we remain ready to do so.
So are they wrong in their criticism?
Well, these people are in need, and people are people, and these Syrians need as much support as we can possibly give them at this hour.
Kelly Clements, thanks very much.
Thank you.